Everyone talks about compound interest like it's magic. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Every financial guru mentions it within the first 5 minutes of any wealth building video. But here's what nobody tells you. Compounding feels like a complete lie for the first several years. You invest diligently, you check your accounts, and the growth is pathetic. You're contributing $500 per month and your portfolio went up by what? $80 last year from actual returns, less than your monthly contribution. So you start wondering if everyone's been exaggerating. If compound interest works for people who start with $100,000, but for normal people starting from zero, it's a cruel joke, and you'll be dead before this snowball actually gets rolling. I felt exactly this way for years. Then I discovered something called the 843 rule, a simple mathematical pattern that completely changed how I understood the timeline of wealth building. Because here's what's actually happening. Compounding isn't slow. It's backloaded. The gains are hidden in the later years, invisible from where you're standing today. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just standing at the worst vantage point to appreciate what's coming. The 843 rule describes how long it takes to hit sequential milestones when you're investing consistently. Reaching your first major milestone takes approximately 8 years. Doubling that amount takes only 4 additional years. Doubling it again takes just 3 more years. 8 years for the first chunk, 4 years for the second, 3 years for the third. And the timeline accelerates even though your contributions stay exactly the same. This pattern emerges from the mathematics of compound growth, and it explains why so many people quit investing right before the magic actually starts working. Let me walk through concrete numbers. Imagine someone investing $10,000 per year, roughly $833 per month, earning an average annual return of 12%, starting from zero. After 8 years of consistent investing, they've contributed $80,000 of their own money, and their portfolio has grown to approximately $123,000. Gains from compounding of about $43,000, roughly 53% on top of contributions. Not bad, but nothing earth-shattering. Now watch the next phase. After 4 more years, at the 12-year mark, they've contributed $120,000 total, and their portfolio has grown to approximately $241,000 in just 4 years. Their account nearly doubled. Gains from compounding exploding to $121,000, now exceeding their total contributions for the first time. This is the crossover moment where your money starts working harder than you do. The final phase gets truly absurd. After 3 more years, at the 15-year mark, they've contributed $150,000 total, and their portfolio has grown to approximately $372,000 in just 3 years. Their account added more value than it did in the entire first 8 years combined. The contribution stayed constant the entire time. The return percentage stayed constant. And the only thing that changed was the size of the base that was compounding. That made all the difference. This is the 843 rule in action, not a magic formula. Simply what compound growth looks like when you map it against real milestones. Most people never see this acceleration because they quit during the first 8 years. They look at their modest gains, compare them to the hype they've heard about compounding, and conclude that either the math doesn't work or that it only works for rich people. They stop contributing, they raid their accounts for purchases, and they never reach the part of the curve where the real growth happens. Understanding the 843 rule gives you a timeline, transforming compound interest from a vague concept into a concrete schedule you can actually plan around. Here is why this pattern exists mathematically. Compound interest growth follows an exponential curve, which starts almost flat, appearing linear for a long time, then suddenly curves upward with dramatic steepness. When you're standing at year 2 or 3 looking forward, the curve ahead looks nearly flat because the steep part is hidden beyond the horizon of your current perspective, and your brain concludes the growth will continue at this disappointing rate forever. But that extrapolation is wrong. In the early years, your contributions dominate your returns. If you're contributing $10,000 a year and your portfolio is worth $30,000, even a great 12% return only adds $3,600. So the growth feels slow because you're doing most of the work. In the middle years, contributions and returns reach par. Your portfolio might be $100,000, generating $12,000 in returns while you contribute $10,000 in the later years. Returns completely dominate. Your portfolio might be $300,000, generating $36,000, while you still contribute $10,000. Your money now doing more than 3 times the work you are. This is exactly what the 843 rule captures. The first 8 years are contribution dominated and grinding. The next 4 are transitional with momentum building. And the final 3 are return dominated, with your money working dramatically harder than you are. Knowing this pattern changes how you interpret early results. When you look at your portfolio after 3 years and feel disappointed by modest gains, remind yourself you're in the contribution-dominated phase, which is mathematically normal, not broken. When your annual returns start approaching the size of your annual contributions, you're entering the transitional phase, the snowball picking up speed. When your annual returns exceed your annual contributions, you've crossed into return-dominated territory, and your primary job becomes simply not interfering. Don't withdraw. Don't panic sell. Don't interrupt the compounding machine. Let me show you how. Dramatically, the timeline compresses as the portfolio grows larger. At a 12% annual return, money doubles approximately every 6 years. But this doesn't account for ongoing contributions. Your first $50,000 takes years because you're building mostly through contributions. Your second $50,000 takes less time because returns are helping meaningfully. Your third takes even less because returns are doing most of the heavy lifting. By the time your portfolio reaches $200,000, it's generating $24,000 or more in annual returns. So adding another $50,000 might only take 2 years. By the time it reaches $500,000, it's generating $60,000 or more. And your $10,000 annual contribution has become almost irrelevant to the growth rate, with the portfolio adding your entire annual contribution every 2 months through returns alone. This is why longtime investors often describe the later years as feeling like cheating. The tragedy is how many people abandon the journey just before reaching this phase. Consider someone who invests diligently from age 25 to 33, accumulating around $100,000, and then stops contributing. That $100,000 will still grow through compounding, reaching perhaps $310,000 by age 50 if left alone. But compare that to someone who kept contributing through the transition phase and into the return-dominated phase, who might have $800,000 or more at the same age. The difference isn't just the extra contributions. The continuous investor captured the acceleration phase where each dollar contributed gets multiplied most aggressively by the years of compounding that follow. Let me introduce you to 2 investors who started at the same time with the same contributions. Rebecca started investing at 27. She contributed $800 per month without fail, weathering the ups and downs of the market. After 8 years, at 35, her portfolio had grown to about $115,000. She felt underwhelmed. Her friends were buying houses and driving nice cars while she funneled money into an account that didn't seem to be doing much. But she'd read about compound growth, so she kept going. By year 12, at 39, her portfolio had crossed $135,000. Her annual returns were now exceeding her annual contributions, and she could feel the momentum building. By year 15, at 42, she had $380,000. The previous 3 years had added more value than the first 8 years combined. The magic was real. It just took 15 years to fully materialize. Priya started at the same age with the same contribution rate. She made it 5 years before losing faith. Her portfolio was around $55,000, and the growth felt painfully slow. She calculated that at this rate she'd be ancient before accumulating anything meaningful. So she stopped contributing and redirected that money toward lifestyle upgrades. Her $55,000 sat in a market and grew on its own. And by age 42, 15 years after she started, it had grown to roughly $170,000 through compounding alone. Not bad for money she'd stopped contributing to a decade earlier. But Rebecca had $380,000 at the same age, a difference of $210,000. Both started at the same time and contributed the same amount for the first 5 years. The only difference was that Rebecca pushed through the discouraging early phase while Priya surrendered to it. The 843 rule would have told Priya exactly what to expect. That the first 8 years would feel slow. Acceleration would come in years 9 through 12. and years 13 through 15 would deliver explosive results. With that roadmap, she might have found the patience to continue. Starting age matters, though perhaps not in the way people typically describe it. Starting earlier means you reach the acceleration phase while you're still young, enough to enjoy the results. Someone who starts at 25 reaches the explosive growth phase around age 40, with decades to benefit from return-dominated compounding, while someone who starts at 40 reaches the explosive phase around age 55, with much less runway. Even beginning at 45, you'll still experience the 843 acceleration and reach a phase where returns dominate contributions. You just need to understand the first -1 years will feel slow and push through without losing faith. There's a psychological obstacle that derails many investors during the early years. When your portfolio is small, market volatility feels like it erases your progress. You contribute $10,000 over a year and then the market drops 8% and wipes out most of your gains. And it feels like running on a treadmill sliding backward. But during the contribution-dominated phase, market drops actually help you because lower prices mean your contributions buy more shares that will compound for decades. The investors who build real wealth are the ones who kept contributing during 2008 and 2009, buying shares at steep discounts, and the ones who didn't panic in 2020 during the return-dominated phase. Volatility becomes more significant because your base is larger at 10%. Drop on a $500,000 portfolio is $50,000. So that's when you want stability and a cool head. But during the early years, volatility is your friend, creating buying opportunities at lower prices. Here's a practical application. First, calculate your approximate timeline based on when you started investing seriously. If you're 3 years in and feeling discouraged, recognize you're not even halfway through the first phase. Second, identify which phase you're in by comparing your annual investment returns to your annual contributions. If contributions are larger, you're in the early accumulation phase. If roughly equal, you're in the transition phase. If returns exceed contributions, you've entered the acceleration phase. Third, adjust your expectations accordingly, focusing on increasing your contribution rate during the early phase, on consistency and avoiding withdrawals during the transition phase, and on simply not interfering during the acceleration phase. Fourth, use the 843 pattern to set milestone goals. If you're starting from zero today, your 8-year goal might be $150,000. Your 12-year goal might be $300,000. And your 15-year goal might be $450,000 or more. Fifth, visualize the endpoint rather than the current position. The person mentally projecting forward to year 15 sustains far more motivation than the person only seeing where they currently stand. This pattern applies not just to investment accounts, but to any compounding system, including your career. The first 8 years involve building skills, credibility, and network, and the growth feels slow, with promotions requiring years of waiting. The next 4 years often bring acceleration, as accumulated skills start commanding premium compensation. The following 3 years can bring explosive progress, as senior roles become accessible and equity compensation kicks in. Many people quit careers right before the acceleration phase, just as they abandon investment portfolios, resetting their clock and never reaching the knee of the curve. Most people evaluate their investment progress by looking backward, comparing their modest portfolio to the massive numbers thrown around in financial media and feeling like they're falling behind. The 843 rule suggests evaluating your progress by looking forward instead, calculating what your current portfolio and contribution rate will produce in 15 or 20 years if left uninterrupted. That forward projection almost always looks dramatically better than the backward reflection. The wealth is already locked in mathematically. You just haven't reached the part of the timeline where it becomes visible yet. The investor who understands this behaves differently. Patient during the early years because they know what's coming. Aggressive about contributions because they understand the leverage those early dollars will receive. Unshaken by volatility because they recognize it as a buying opportunity. Most importantly, they don't quit. 8 years feels like forever when you're living through it. 4 years feels substantial but achievable. 3 years passes in a blink, and then you're standing on the other side looking at a portfolio that generates more in returns each year than you could possibly contribute. Compounding isn't slow, it's backloaded. The magic is real.